right, guys. Thank you very much for watching this podcast. Today, we are honoured to have Eoin McGee on, better known from How to Be Good with Money on RTE, and also the book. Which came first, Eoin?
The TV show came first. Yeah.
And then
I was
the
lucky
book.
enough to be able to rob the name for the book.
Excellent. And it was a bestseller, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's actually, I haven't looked at it in a couple of months. It's a real consistent seller. Like, that's actually been on the shelves since March 20. So my book launch got cancelled because we went into lockdown, the very first one. And it's a real consistent seller. And like, it's mad. Like, last week compared to this week, we sold twice as many books this week as we did the week before. And sometimes it's just because I say something on Instagram, but no, we're not far off being the best personal finance book of all time in Ireland.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's fantastic. And
I'm definitely number 2, but might be number 1.
Yeah, well, we'll get it to number 1 after this podcast.
Joe, we can have a book launch next week.
Yeah,
just a couple of glasses of wine and look at the book and waltz around the place of it.
We could, but I'm supposed to be turning the volume down on the old one because there's a new one coming out in the new year. So the second book is coming out in the new year and just finished it.
We get that. We get that to number 2. We'll mention that at the end as well. I think the reason why it's consistent is because money is relevant all the time.
Yeah, and to everyone.
Yeah,
and that's the point.
To everyone, yeah.
To everyone, all the time, and it's always one of those constant challenges for people until they crack it. And when they crack it, it actually becomes automated. Do you know what it's like? It's like, do you ever see those lads like who are big into their fitness and like they just look ripped and they always look great and they say it's easy and you're on, yeah, right, it's easy. Like, it's not. Like, you're giving up stuff. The funny thing about money, getting on top of your money and getting it right, if you do the really hard work at the start, it just becomes automated after that. Like, it just becomes the natural thing that my money comes in when I get paid, this, and this happens, and then I just live my life. And that's the big difference with money and fitness. Fitness and keeping the weight off and all of that stuff is stuff that you have to constantly be working on. But with money, you can actually automate it. I think the easiest example, like the simplest example of that is, if you think about someone who decides that they want to save money, right? And I'm like, the reality is either you are a saver or you're a not, right? You have the habit of saving or you don't. And that's a choice you've made consciously or subconsciously. But if you want to become a saver, if you say to yourself, I want to become a saver, there's no such thing as I'm crap at saving or I've never been able to save. You want to become a saver. The biggest mistake that people make is they say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get paid. I'm going to do nothing with my life. And at the end of the month, before I get paid the next time, whatever's left in my bank account, I'm going to save all of that. Now, think about the equivalent of that. That's like a bit like saying, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to eat nothing all day long, right? And at the end of the day, I'm going to pick up a Big Mac. I'm going to sniff it. I'm not going to eat it. And then I'm going to put it away for later. Like, that's what you're doing with your savings. The easiest way of doing savings and getting started is to decide now. And like, depending, I don't know when this is going out, guys, right? But assuming it's going out before Christmas, decide now.
Oh, definitely before Christmas, yeah.
Right. So what I would say to you is Christmas is the funny time, but decide now in January, the first time you get paid in January, pick a figure right now that if you couldn't save it, you'd be mortified if you told your mammy that I couldn't save this much out of my wages. I don't care if it's a 5, I don't care what it is, right? But you decide now, when I get paid in January, I'm going to save X amount of money, and if I don't do it, I'd be mortified. Right? Make it really easy and do it as soon as you get paid, and then live your life for the rest of the month, right? Yeah. Guilt-free. Don't worry about eating the Big Mac because you've already put the money aside at the start of the month, right? And if you do that and you get the habit started, the next month, you just turn up the volume a little bit and turn up, because once you've started the habit, and this is what I mean by the difference between money and fitness. When it comes to money, once you have it set up, you just set up the direct debit or the standing order to happen every month once you get paid. You don't have to think about it again. That's another mistake. People say, I'm going to start saving money. And when I start saving my money, I'll make a decision every month to manually transfer it. I'll open up my bank account, I'll transfer it. No, make the decision once and just let it happen automatically after that.
It looks good in there, though. It looks good in there for a little while. It's like, I've got $2,000 in the bank now. I'm happy out.
Yeah. that's one of the other things people find. They get addicted to savings. Like when you look at the numbers during lockdown, like in April, the month after my book was launched, in the first April 2020, right? In an ordinary month, Irish people, households in Ireland, not companies, people in Ireland, in an ordinary month, save 443 million euro. That's how much we save on average. In the month of April, the first month of lockdown, the whole world is closed down. We couldn't spend any money. We saved 3,000 million. We saved 3 billion in the month of April 2020.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was just about to ask you, it was obviously easier for people. Your book couldn't have come out at a better time in that respect. Maybe
Look what your book did to us. Look what your book did. Fuck the pandemic.
People don't want things to open up now. They just want to save money.
Yeah, but you know what you can do anytime you want. And I know you guys love lockdowns and go from making mistakes and everything, right? But anytime you want, you can create your own lockdown and not spend any money if you want to. Right? You don't have to wait for it to be imposed on you. But I do think one of the important points people got was when everything was stripped back, when you had nothing. I asked this question loads of times on Instagram and did polls, and really when you really spoke to people about it, what do you miss most? It wasn't buying clothes or doing things. It was people. People missed people. Yeah. And whether that was going for pints, going for dinner, going away for a weekend, that's what people miss most. And what I've been trying to rabbit on, and who knows, like after we've had 3 chances now to learn what we hate and what we love. But when the world is open, and it is opening back up at the moment again, but when the world's back open, remember the stuff you didn't miss. Don't let it back into your life. And that could be people or things or the 7th cup of coffee you bought on a Tuesday. You didn't get the same enjoyment out of it as you did the first one. So don't let stuff come back into your life that you don't need in your life.
I'm always giving out about the government. I've turned it into a comedy sketch, but also in reality, I'm not stupid either. I know what has to be paid for. I know that money isn't flowing in all the time, and that I'm not stupid. It's the same with opening the bars, like, and I make a lot of videos about drinking pints and everything like that. But obviously, it's a luxury, you know, and we could come back a little bit when it comes to going out, and that we don't miss it as much. But just like you said, it was people that we missed, and that was my main message. It's an Irish thing to miss people or to be involved with other people and humans. I think the most addictive thing in the world is other humans.
Yes.
You know, so I think that's what the most thing that was missed. And I know I associate going out and having pints or going out and meeting people with that, but it is definitely the people that were missed more than anything. And I think, and as you said, I'd hate for people to forget that.
Yeah.
When things open up again.
And I think that's one of the things that people with money have. It's not that they have money that makes life easier on them or whatever else. People who have money have something that some of the rest of us don't have, which is time. Yeah. Like when we'd often get lotto winners, like lotto winners would be a big thing in my private practice, right? So I have all the TV stuff and books and all that stuff, right? But I have a private practice, which is my core business. And it's what I do. And I deal with individuals and their money, right? We get a lot of lotto winners coming to us, or people who have just sold their business, or people who have just inherited money. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. They would come to us for advice because they've just come into money and it's fresh and it's new to them. And one of the messages I drive home to them is, you know, all the stuff that made you happy in the past. Yeah. Well, that's the stuff that's going to make you happy in the future. You just have more time to do it now. And that's what this money, if managed properly, does for you. It gives you time. And when we have all the time in the world, that's when we really strip back to find out what is it that's important to us? What are the things that we want to fill our life with? And generally, you know what? You see people driving nice cars and you see people doing this stuff and that stuff. And some people genuinely get an enjoyment out of it, and other people do it because they think it's really what they're trying to show the world is this is who I am, and this is a brand that I am, or this is a message it sends out about me because I drive this car. But I have yet to come across someone who has created real wealth for themselves or come into real wealth that hasn't identified the ability to do things with other people and to do them comfortably and to enjoy them and have the time to do them as the most important thing when you strip everything else back.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a great point. Sorry, Chris, go on.
No, I was just wondering, Owen, were you always like quote unquote good with money? Or was this a mechanism that you taught yourself or had someone else teach you where and kind of grew into this profession, like, if that makes sense before you?
And
Stuff
actually,
that kind of go that way, like, you know?
funny enough, I touch on this in the new book. I've had hard times. Like, and to be honest with you, if I hadn't had hard times financially, I wouldn't know half this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that I would say is that it's been said to me, I hate saying, oh, I'm like this. I don't know what I'm like, right? I'm just me, right? But it's been said to me that I'm able to relate to people at different levels. Like, I'm in my private practice and I've got people with millions of euros and they're coming in and they're looking for advice and I can talk to them on their level. But I've also got other people who stop me on the street and I chat to them and they ask me questions. And I think I have an ability to relate or to empathize or resonate with different levels because I've been at different levels. And you know what? If I hadn't been at different levels, if I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I would just be false. Yeah. So have I always been good with money? No, absolutely not. Lads, I'm going to be honest with you. I enjoy spending my money. Like, I enjoy nice things. But what I have found is, and I do, like, I drive a nice car, and but I like experiences. I like doing stuff that I remember afterwards. I'm not really as big into things. Experiences where, for me, it's just like, wow, I will remember that for years to come. I was talking to a client this morning. They're heading away to Malta. And I said, wow, I remember back in 2001 or 2002, I was in Malta and we got one of these American Vietnam Jeeps, you know, the Jeeps that's in Good Morning Vietnam, right? And this guy brought up through the mountains in this thing. And it's one of those experiences. And here I am 20 years later, someone mentions Malta and I remember it, right? I haven't a clue, did I have a Nokia 6310 then or not? I don't know what items I had, but I do remember that experience. And to me, having money allows me to do experiences with people I want to do them with and really enjoy them and not worry that it's taking food off the table.
Yeah. Well, you said there that you're able to chat to people at different levels. And that's exactly what I got from watching your program on RTE. You were able to take a subject that people just shy away from because it's so it can be so complicated, or it seems so complicated, especially for young couples when they're trying to get mortgages.
It's also an Irish tradition not to talk about money.
Yeah, well, big time. You know, Irish, we sort of, it's even when you're getting paid, it's an Irish thing, and you're doing a job for someone, and they offer you, you know, I'll sort you out now when you finish the job, or here, you're like, I don't know, shall we deal with it later? It's like you're afraid to get paid for the job that you were paid, that you've been asked to do.
Yeah. They said, so, like, I work in recruitment, and it's like that. Don't tell them what you're getting paid. Don't get them to. I was like, I'm a professional. I have to know. You're shaking. And I was like, are you on 50 grand or 60 grand? Because this job is 50 grand, and there's no point offering it to you if it's 60. Let's stop wasting our time here, like.
And sometimes we get pulled out. When you mentioned Ireland there and talking about money, sometimes we get pulled out of our environment. This time last year, I was doing a conference. I do loads of conferences. This one was a virtual one, but it was to an audience in London. And it was an audience of my peers, other financial planners. And there was like 400 people signed up to this thing. And I'd been to the conference myself as an attendee a few times. I was asked to speak at it. I said, this is a nice thing to do. And I went and did it. But one of the things I was asked to talk about was, what are you doing in the media, Owen? And what areas are you covering? And I said, I do loads of radio. I do loads of, I have a TV show, and I've involved in previous thing. I've got a book out, and those things are all going along. And I think the thing that helps me to achieve, like, I'm a true believer that people are better served with good financial advice or good financial planning than they are without it. And I don't think I would have got this far if I didn't actually believe that. I genuinely believe if you can get a good financial planner on your side, you will do much better financially throughout your life. The stats prove that you're 2.5 times better off with a good financial planner than you are on your own when you hit retirement, right? So I genuinely believe that. There's a personal reason why I believe it. But what I said, the message I actually delivered at that conference to these 400 delegates was, one of the biggest achievements of the book, the TV shows, the radio slots, the Instagram, all of the stuff that you're doing in the public eye, is that I believe, in my own small way, I've got a country that doesn't talk about money talking about money.
Yeah.
And I get that from the questions I get, public questions, private questions I get on social media. I get that from, and it's less so now because of COVID, people are a bit more reluctant, and kind of the mask helps sometimes that you can hide behind it. But we used to be walking down the street, you'd get people asking you questions, and I still do get it. I love that stuff. Yeah. I love people coming, I know the show and I wanted to ask you this, and like you'd stop for 10 minutes and you'd give nieces and nephews advice through the auntie that's standing in front of you and all of that stuff. And that's great because we don't talk about money, and we it's a big taboo, and it's something that we should do more of. And it would be so much better if we did. And I'm not talking about, we should be comfortable with our failures. We should also be comfortable with our successes, which we're not at all. Like, no,
100%. It's like, but I find in this country as well, if people think that you're doing well, there is that little bit of begrudgery in the country. And I know it's great. It's a fabulous country for doing charity work.
It's a tradition though, Stephen, and you're a traditionalist.
That's one tradition I don't like. I've never had a green eye ever. I love to see people doing well, but there is a big begrudgery when it comes to, we'll say, as you mentioned, lottery winners.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know any lottery winners, but and more luck to them if anyone that I knew did become a lottery winner. But I know for a fact that there'll be an awful lot of people. It would happen. You know, it would be a bollocks like that would win the lottery.
I'll give you a brilliant example. This was back in global financial crisis times, and I had a client who was seriously under pressure. The banks were coming in really, really heavy and hard on them. And I won't give too much away because I'm definitely not going to, you won't be able to identify them from the story. But they won, and they won money on the lotto, right? They won, like, it wasn't massive money, like it wasn't in the millions. It was kind of in the hundreds of thousands. And interestingly enough, it wasn't enough to even get them out of the hole they were in with the banks. And they were incredibly stressed. And I remember, now nobody knows who my clients are. Like, we would have siblings that don't know each other are clients, right? Because it's confidential and that's it, full stop. People who are clients can tell anyone they want that they're our clients, but we won't tell anyone who they are, right? But I remember someone saying to me that, did you see such and such a person? My friend knows them. And they said, doesn't money follow money? I just have no idea what's going on. And I just had to, it does, But I was just blown away. And it's the same, with everything. Look at your man driving the new car the first week in January. Look at that car. That's not a new car. That's a new loan. Like, yes. You know, and it's just that thing where we just kind of, can we not just, like, if you're in the States and your business fails, well done, man. You'll do great the next time. You'll learn from that. Or you do well with something and it's, you worked hard for that. You deserved it. Here it's, who did you sleep with? Or who did you manage that one? It's just, but you know what? It's just the way we're made up, and you wouldn't change this for the world, but we might change that.
Myself and Stephen have a friend, and he's very much, I've always used this analogy where he's very much the one that he's looking over the into the next door garden or the shed or whatever, and he sees a big fancy car and he's always fucking looking at that and he's jealous.
That's right.
But what he doesn't realize is that the motor's gone in it. So he's looking for he's so busy looking at that, he's actually not looking ahead of what he needs to do himself to get that car.
100%. And if it's the same character that I think it is, Chris, this fella is a genius. If he's
so talented. His own work. He's so talented. If he just put that dedication of, oh, what's that fucker doing over there? Oh, I can't. It's always him. He always gets lucky. If he put the amount of time into his own craft.
Lads, you know what? You both better say he's sound and you love him, just in case he identifies himself when he's listening.
He's too narcissistic to watch this. He won't bother his arse watching this. He's too big for that.
But there's so many different types of people with money. And I've had all stages, and I'm gonna go through my financial history now in a couple of minutes. But there are people that
this is a cheap way of getting his time, Stephen, in fairness.
This is what it's all about. That's what it's all about. like there are people that literally, the money can't come out of their pocket quick enough, and my father would be an example. It literally, he had 42 men working for him at the height of the Celtic Tiger as a contractor, a builder. 42 always, and then he had subcontractors. So money was a flow, like there was millions going through the account or whatever. But yes, it was going through, but it was going out just as quick. But people would only see what was going in, not what was going out. But it literally, money could not go out of his pocket, and it didn't change when things went tits up. It like literally, like once he gets it, it's gone.
A habit, isn't it? Like
it's a habit. There has to be something bought. There's always something to be bought, and it's never ever thinking about 2 weeks down the line or 6 months down the line. It's just the way that type of person is, and I know a lot of people like that. Then there are people that would literally survive when others would die roaring. Like they'd save, if they were on the dole, they'd save half it every week. It's incredible the difference in people.
Yeah, and a lot of it actually, funny enough, a lot of it goes back to your childhood and what way money was in the house when you were growing up. Either you had loads of it, or and it's funny, you can have two siblings and they grow up in the same house, but they both took absolute opposites from it. Yeah. Like it can be very, very scary to watch it. It's funny, like this is the first time I'm talking publicly about the new book, but this is huge about this content that is so fresh in my head because it's all I've been writing about in the new book, and it's about our relationship with money. It's about understanding what influences and what impacts us when it comes to our relationship with money. But interestingly enough, I always talk about like the wood for the trees stuff. Like if you take your dad there and you're mentioning the money came in and had to go out straight away, that's what I call Parkinson's law, right? So Parkinson's law actually relates to the length of time you have to do a job is how long it's going to take it. So if you have an hour to cut the grass, it takes an hour. If you have 3 hours to cut the grass, it takes 3 hours. If you make 100 grand a year, you'll spend 100. If you make 300 grand a year, you'll spend 300, right? And the only way to reverse Parkinson's law is to automate savings and pensions and all of this stuff out. So that there's money coming into the account on the first of the month, you take it out, because it doesn't matter how much you take out. If you're still comfortable, whatever's left in your pocket is going to be burnt away anyway. So just leave less in the account till it's been sent off somewhere else and it's gone into savings and pensions and investments and whatever else. And that's the whole, because you're not going to change that nature. So you have to use the tools available to you. And it's never before been easier to set up standing orders, to throw money into like even simple stuff. And let's just bring it right back down here for a second. People use fintech accounts like Revolut and N26, right? Let's just imagine you're listening to this in December and you're saying, right, forget about Christmas, but you're going to go on holidays next July, right? And just to keep the math simple, it's going to cost you 600 quid, just to keep the math simple, to go on holidays next July, wherever you're going to go, right? You should take 100 quid a month from January until June out of your wages and stick them into an account. So next July you turn up and you've got 600 quid in your bank account, in your fintech, Revolut, N26, in your little wallet or your space or whatever else, and on post.
And then you can do that guilt free, because it's already like it's not a big wad taken out of your monthly salary.
Absolutely. And what people describe to me is, that was the best holiday I've ever had because I paid for it before I went, instead of borrowing money or sticking it on the credit card or whatever else. And you know what? If you turn around, if I say to you, you're going to go on holidays, you've gone on holidays every bar COVID, right? You've gone on holidays every other year for 600 quid every July, and I'm keeping the math simple, and you're going to do it next July. You were, right? And I say, put 100 quid a month aside for the next 6 months. You say, I can't afford 100 quid next 6 months, but then you can't afford to go on holidays. Because what's going to happen is you're going to go on holidays, and instead of saving the 600 quid a month for 6 months, you're going to pay back the 600 quid a month for the 6 months after you come back, and you've got this horrible hangover from the holiday.
And more, because it's obviously, if you have to borrow money, there's interest on it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me in my late teens, early 20s. I went from school into a job. I started working for my father, and money was just, again, it was coming into me. I couldn't keep it, I couldn't keep it spent. And then, but the thing is, my tastes and my holidays kept getting more expensive. So I ended up borrowing to keep the lifestyle, keep it rolling. But yet the money was coming in, so I was able to keep the wolves at the door by paying all the monthly payments and that. But eventually, it snowballs to a point where it's you can't manage it anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
Was that a tough time when you did get to the point, the cracking point?
It wasn't a tough time at the time, but then when things started, even when the crash happened, then the flow in had completely dried up overnight, but the flow out was still, and I had nothing saved. I had nothing saved to back that up. So suddenly I went from all I was really doing was having a great time, but all I was really doing was building up debt. I mean, that's as simple as that. And it took me years and years, and I ended up paying as much of it back as possible. And it took me years to get out of that. And now I'm able to save myself. But just like if you looked into my history, you would probably have
do you ever feel like a therapist, Owen?
Sorry, all the time, yeah. What I'm really interested to hear was when you reached the point where you said, right, I'm going to have to tackle this properly now, right? Yeah. What was your feeling towards your debt? How did you feel about it?
I was like, why? Like, what was I at? I was just in panic mode. I went straight into panic mode. I led up to that point a brilliant lifestyle, a wild sort of lifestyle, but I had responsibilities when I had kids at the time as well. So that was another thing in the mix. So it ended up, my heart started failing when I was 28. I got so stressed about it that I ended up in ICU in Castlebar. And after that, that's the point. It took me to that point was when I turned around and said, listen, I have to attack it. I was putting off things. I was paying little bits off here and there. They weren't worth the paper that they were wrote on, because all they were doing was paying interest. So eventually that was all getting all together as well. And it took me now I'm probably the boy with the golden star in the class, because as you said, I have all different pots to put it into that I cannot touch for different things throughout, say Christmas time or a holiday or anything, or savings like that. I have all different sort of accounts. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but it's the way that works for me.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. There is no right way. It's the way that works for you. That's the really important thing. What's your opinion on debt now? If you walked into the bank and they said, "Oh, it's coming up to Christmas. Do you want an overdraft? Do you want?"
Never, ever will I get into debt again. The only loan I would get again is a mortgage. If I could, in my life, I've had 4 different houses, 4 different mortgages, and I eventually sorted them out as well. The only debt I would get into again is a mortgage. Obviously, everyone wants their own house.
Yeah. I would say to you though, sorry, what I would say to you, that's exactly where that point you just got to there with me a second ago is exactly where you needed to be, right?
Yeah.
What my biggest fear is, I would have situations where I see people who accumulate up a load of debt. They have really good income coming in, they bring it back down again, and then they accumulate a little bit more and they bring it back down again. And the biggest problem with that is they continue with that cycle all the way through to just before they're ready to retire. They've got really good incomes coming in, they've got loads of access to debt, they keep accumulating up the debt, but they never reach the point, and I'm going to put a word in your mouth here and you'll either agree or disagree, they never reach the point where you reached, which is you hated your debt.
Oh, yeah.
And you hated it to the point where you're saying, I will never take on what I call crappy debt again. We have happy debt, which is mortgages, and we have crappy debt, which is all the other loans that you get, right? And you need to never forget what that debt did to you, because it was the debt that did to you. It put you in
credit cards, the whole works. Credit union loans, credit cards, the whole works. I had 2 credit union loans. Like I was just, all I was doing was feeding. Yeah. But it looked great. It looked great because I had 2 cars and a lovely house and the whole works like that. But but behind it all, like Chris said, you can have all these things, and but in reality, all it is a loan.
But if you don't reach the point of hating the debt, that's where it's really scary. We had a client recently who I take phone calls from prospective clients. Brilliant income, like amazing income. Like we're talking top half of 1% of earners in the country, but a load of debt, and reaching retirement, and they're at that point where they're going, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. I don't know how I'm going to do my retirement. And I said, okay, we need to tackle the debt. And this was just a 15-minute phone call with me to decide if we're going to take them on as a client or not. And they turned around and they said, you're going to get rid of everything except the credit card. And I said, sorry. And no, you need to get rid of all your debt. No, the credit card's good to have. It's just in case of emergencies. And I just said, really bluntly, I said, listen, you're not ready to do this. Whoever creates this, get you out of jail, is going to fail because you don't hate your debt enough. And unless you get to the point where you never want to take out a loan again, you're never going to fix this. And we didn't take them on for lots of reasons. That's really not what we do. We do it for existing clients if they fall into difficulties, but we don't deal with managing debt for people.
Sure.
But it was a real obvious, like this person was earning kind of 600-700 grand a year and looking down the barrel of retirement, and they were not going to be able to do it unless they got to the point where the bank stopped offering them loans and they started hating them, and they were miles, and they've been doing this for 40 years. Like,
yeah, it's mad thing. It's about the one thing I wanted to ask you about was, instead of, like, obviously what Stephen did is what lots of people had done at that time. What Stephen did there, where he got cars and houses and credit cards and loans left, right, and center, is the epitome of why the economy crashed in Ireland in a small microcosm. Obviously, there's much bigger things at play than that. But like, Stephen was one of 10 people in my village that did the same, you know? But like, now is a very different mindset, especially say for people our age, in their 30s or going into their 40s or whatever, and they just want to get a mortgage. And things are tough, much tougher to get on now than they may have been in 2005 and 2004.
Yeah.
You know, do you have any advice for, you know, people of this age, maybe like myself, single in their early 30s, just trying to saving enough, working in Dublin, want to do a house at home or something like that? But how do you put those mechanisms in place?
Well, one of the things is that it is about controlling the controllables. And I know that's something that's used all the time, but there's certain things that are in your control.
For Alex Ferguson,
jobby
there.
Absolutely. But there are certain things that you can control, and there's certain things outside of your control, like the price of a house, right? That's very much outside your control. But you need to put your best foot forward in terms of the stuff you can do. And in simple terms, right? If you know how much, if you were able to build a house or buy a house wherever, right? And you know how much that's going to cost, right? And you need to work out what your mortgage is going to be. And the rules are really clear, right? You take your salary and you multiply it by 3.5. Literally punch your salary into your calculator on your phone and multiply it by 3.5. That's the mortgage you're getting. Now there's exceptions and other things that happen, right? But that's the mortgage you're going to get. And you might get a little bit more. But if everything else is equal, you're going to get that mortgage. So if you're on 100 grand, you're going to get 350 grand. If you're on 50 grand, you're going to get 175 grand. Okay? So that's where your level is at. If you can get 175 grand, I would suggest you get onto Google and you say mortgage calculator, 175 grand, and work out how many years is there between now and you hitting 65. So if you're 35 years, maybe you'll get a 35-year mortgage, 175 grand. And I'm absolutely making this number up, but imagine it's €1,000 a month, right? One of the things you can control is if your mortgage repayment is going to be €1,000 a month, or whatever your mortgage repayment is going to be, you need to be saving and or renting a total of 1.3 times that minimum. Now, to put that into math, if you work out on your mortgage calculator on Google that the mortgage repayment is going to be €1,000 a month, you need to show the bank. You need to walk into the bank in a year or two and say, look, I've been saving $1,300 a month. Now, if you're paying rent of $800 a month, then you need to say, there's my rent of 800 and there's my 500, add the two of them together. I'm at €1,300 a month. Because what you're saying to the banker there is you're saying, your mortgage is going to cost me $1,000 a month. Even if interest rates go up, I've got this 300 quid of a buffer here to be able to take the impact of an increased interest rate. Not only that, you're now starting to enter the territory of, I can't go with 3.5 times. I need 4 times. I need 4.5 times. The max they'll go to is 4.5 times your salary. That's what's called an exception, right? And that's the type of stuff that's in your control. You can show that you have what's called an ability to repay. The bank, when they're looking to give you a mortgage, want to prove 2 things. 1, you've got the ability to repay it every month. And 2, that if you don't, that they can whip the house back out from you and sell it and get all their money back. right? And that's where the security comes into it. That's where your savings or your deposit comes into it. And if you're going to be able to show the 1.3 times, and provided your rent isn't eating all of the 1.3 times, if you're going to be able to show that, you're going to be building up your savings. So you're working on both things. So they're the things that are in your control. Outside of that, there's a whole pile of other things going on. And one of them, and to be fair, if it all comes to fruition, and I hate going here, right? But if the stuff that they're planning for affordable housing with government and some of the schemes that are there, some of them have worked very well over the last couple of years, but there's some big changes coming down the line next year. Like there's two big ones in particular. One is we've always had Rebuilding Ireland, right? And Rebuilding Ireland is where instead of getting your mortgage off a bank, you got your mortgage off the council. It's county council who gives it to you, right? And they'll give you more money. They'll give you more than 3.5 times because they do the calculation differently, right? That's been replaced with an affordable home loan scheme is what they're calling it.
Yeah, I was in the council talking to them about this as well.
Yeah, the big problem with Rebuilding Ireland was it was maximum single salary of 50 grand. It looks like it's going to be 65 grand on the new affordable home loan scheme. The other one, which is a game changer though, is you'll be able to rock up to a bank and get your mortgage from a bank and your deposit, and you and the bank together will buy 70% of the house and the government will buy 30% of it. Okay. So this is a shared ownership scheme. They have them in the UK. It's something that we're venturing into. I think we did it years ago, but we haven't had it for a long time. And the difference here is sometimes you have schemes with the government where there's a 20% of a housing estate might be set up like this, right? But this is where you will be able to buy any house using this shared ownership between you and the government.
Does that mean the government have 30% of your house forever, or can you even buy the government out of that?
You can buy the government back, and there will be rules that if you sell the house, they get their 30% if you haven't paid them back. In other jurisdictions, what you'll find is that typically after 5 years, you have to start paying them back. So you start paying them back a bit by bit. The point is it gets you onto the ladder. In 5 years' time, hopefully your salary's gone up a bit and you can afford to start paying them back. It's not without its flaws, but it's
I think Scandinavia have lots of schemes like bits and pieces like that as well. And know that, but they also have certain caps on how many houses you can buy as well. Like so they're not you can't go monopolize a whole street and rent out and increase the rent like you would in certain streets in Dublin. Yeah,
they also have very high taxes and a great standard of living.
But
like they do things differently. Do you know what I mean?
Their taxes are. I was in Stockholm twice, and you were there as well, Chris. They have extremely high taxes, but their public transport is next to none. You know, they're brilliant. Everything else is paid for, like, you know.
I know, lads. Now hold on a second, right? So you telling me, right, that if we gave our government loads of extra taxes, we'd get the same thing?
No, but that's another story.
Yeah. And if you were in Sweden, you mightn't be saying the same thing as well. So
it's a different mindset over there. Who was it that said if you left the Irish government, and this was years ago, so nothing has changed. If you left the Irish government in charge of the sand and the Sahara Desert, it'd be gone. It'd be gone. Like
I would argue. I mean, see, that's the difference between Ireland and Scandinavia from a taxation point of view, but just from a societal point of view, is it's a different way of living, and it's accepted and bought into by all society, right? So I am tongue in cheek. It doesn't matter who's in power, and I'm not political in any way in terms of I'm not associated with any party, but it doesn't matter who's in power. If someone came into power and jacked up all our taxes to 70%. You'd still need societal buy-in to be able to actually achieve what they've achieved in Scandinavian countries. Yeah. So, and some people would argue, how come they can
while we're on that, I have so many questions. They're all coming into my head now. While we're on the topic of governments, if you were made Minister for Finance in the morning, what would you do? Would you do anything different?
I think one of the realities is, and they've already kind of flagged this, we've just come through a really difficult period as a government. Let's be honest, right? Just from the public finances point of view, we've had to borrow money, we've had to commit to PUP, we've had to do wage subsidy schemes. And I genuinely think, all in all, they did actually work out, right? I think the economy would be on the floor right now if we hadn't have borrowed the money that we needed to borrow to keep money coming into people's pockets. And for two reasons. One was that it gave people, like, if you get through a pandemic like that, which is a once in a lifetime event, hopefully, right? And you come through it okay financially, it gives you a different set of financial confidence in yourself to be able to weather the storm in the future, right? And also a lot of people built up savings and whatever else, but let's not forget 2 million people in Ireland were better off financially as a result of COVID. Their wages stayed the same, whether it was through government supports or just their salaries, and their expenses fell through the floor, right? So there's 2 million people who have had a positive financial experience, but as a government, it wasn't a positive thing. They borrowed a whole pile of money that they weren't expected to borrow. They didn't borrow as much as they thought they were going to do, but one of the biggest things that would threaten the future of our recovery from this is if people start to get a feeling that they're going to get taxed heavily to pay it back. And I think that narrative is very dangerous. Oh, they do have to take it back from somewhere. They do have to make it back somewhere. But we borrow them for no.
That's what I think. That's what I think. Where people will turn again. It's all right having lockdowns and everything that, and we're all shouting about it. And I'm making my videos, and that's grand. And I try and make them as funny as possible. But it's not when it's not hitting anyone's pocket quite yet. People are all right. They'll abide by whatever. But it's when it's going to hit people's pockets in a few months' time. And if we're still in lockdown, I think that's when there will be uproar in the country.
I do agree. Sorry, go on.
There's also realities that things change, and especially the way financial institutions look at the economy changes as well. I read some report, I don't know where I read it, about the leader of the IMF has come out and said that the capacity of a country's ability to take on debt is actually much higher threshold than previously thought. So when we borrowed money off the IMF back in 2008, when the financial crash happened, we loaded ourselves with debt, but we actually had the capacity to do a lot more. And what we did wrong was then implement austerity, which austerity clearly didn't work, because Iceland didn't go through the austerity that the Irish or the Greek or the Portuguese did, and they came out of their recessions much quicker. If anything, what they should have done is take the money to stimulate the economy and put more money in circulation. That would actually alleviate the debt a lot quicker.
Well, that's actually, and this is the point I would say, when we jump back to the question of what would I do as Minister for Finance today, I think the message needs to be really strong. We're getting out of this by spending, not by taxing.
Yeah.
Right. And let's not forget the figure we gave earlier on, 3 billion was saved in April. We have over 126 billion in savings in household deposits right now. Like, it has jumped dramatically since the start of lockdown. And what we need to do, and we've tried in a way to do it, and we struggle to go back, but spend and save or stay and spend or whatever that scheme was, we need to encourage people to spend that money now and spend it locally in hotels.
I've heard people saying I could have done with another 3 months lockdown to get where I wanted to be financially.
Yeah, but tell that person to create their own lockdown for the next 3 months. You don't have to go out into the world. That's the point. But I do think the stay and spend, I think it was called, it was just the wrong timing, because we reintroduced these vouchers where you could get tax back, and there was lots of problems with them. And then we introduced another lockdown, and everyone went, well, that was a waste of time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I do think the 2 million people who are better off as a result of COVID, we need to rely on government to support the businesses that they ask to close, or that they might ask to close in the future. And obviously we don't know, right? We need to, our taxes need to support those companies who have to shut their doors in the interest of public health. But the 2 million people who are doing all right, they have a societal obligation now to, when they can, support the businesses that are still open.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. Definitely.
My aunt used to have a great saying, send it, or spenders and God will send it, so people have that attitude. Some people have that attitude as well. And some people, no matter what they touch, it just turns into money. Some people are just born with gold, the Midas touch.
Yeah, there's a brilliant stat actually out there, and I don't like beating the crap out of any business, but there's a brilliant stat out there, and I'm going to get it wrong, right? But SuperValue Musgrave Group have it, where they say if you spend €1 in a locally owned shop, it turns into €4 in the economy. Now I can't remember if it's 3, 4, or 5, but it's some multiplication, because
I think you're right.
You're paying it in. They're paying wages into the staff. The staff are then spending and buying a pint after work, and €1 turns into 4. Whereas if you spend €1 in a big multinational, it turns into 20 cents in the economy.
Sure.
Like it just gets sucked out of the economy and transferred over to the parent company, wherever it is. And I think that's something, I wish I had the figures right. Maybe I'll put them up on Instagram afterwards or something. There'll be a post at some stage. I'll get it up there. We'll get the right figures up there. But the point is still the same. Spending money in small local businesses is the most important thing we can do as individuals, particularly as we're coming up over the next couple of weeks. If the business is open, support it. Go and give them money. And I am like, people will always say, he's a financial planner, he's all about scrimping and scraping. I'm not all about scrimping and scraping. I'm about all of us, particularly at a time like now, sensibly spending money on stuff that we get enjoyment out of, but that's good for the economy.
Yeah, it's nearly a duty at this stage for us all to try and
bring points together.
It's something like that.
You don't have to ask us twice.
Exactly. to quote Tesco, probably the worst of them all. Every little helps.
It does help. But that's the point. And I do think where your business, like, think about it this way, right? If you have a lovely little local pub, let's call it, or local shop that you want to buy stuff that you love, right? Don't wake up in 6 months go, Jesus, that shop closed down. That's an awful pity. I really miss it. You are the one who's responsible, along with everybody else who's responsible for that little shop in that little village to keep going, right? There's nobody in Berlin saying, I must go and buy my newspaper in that little shop. They're looking after their own little shop. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and I take that across any local business that you love. If it closes down, you're partly responsible at the moment.
Yeah. I take it personally if I don't go to every pub in Swinford at the weekend just to keep them open.
Owen McGee sent me on a mission.
I'm going to spend all my money because Owen McGee told me to drink pints.
Go around the town with the placards.
Owen McGee sent me here.
Listen, Owen, I know you're on a busy schedule, so we won't keep you much longer. There's all the questions now are coming into my head, but we might save that for another time.
We might do. We might come back in a few months' time when the book is on the shelves and we'll go again.
That would be brilliant.
100%. Now, before you go, if Peter was here, French Toast was here, he always asked this question, so I'll ask it. If anyone is getting into the financial business as a profession, what advice do you have for them?
What I would say is that you really need to cut your teeth on lots of different places. So if you're young and you want to go into a career, don't jump straight into financial planning. The bigger the organization you start in, the better, right? The more you move around, I was in my career, I always looked at, right, this is the next job, this is the next job, this is the next job. And when I achieved from that job what I wanted to achieve, I moved on to the next one, right? So, and that's because I got a real kick at the start of it, where I went for a job. I was 19 years of age. I went for a job and I didn't get it. And it was as a financial planner, right? And I was gutted I didn't get it. And I sat down with HR and I said, it was an internal job. I was moving internally in 19 or 20. And I was moving internally and I sat down and said, why didn't get it? Because you didn't have experience in this, and this. So I went back to my manager and I said, I need experience in this, and this. And he looked at me and kind of go, you're not going to get that in this job. I said, grand. And will you keep an eye out if there's anything else in the company? Went back to HR and says, I need this somewhere else in the business. 3-6 weeks later or so, I was gone off to another company that was giving me, it was another life company, It was an insurance company, and was giving me the experience I needed. And a little bit over 12 months, I applied for the job again that I didn't get the first time. And I got it this time. I was the youngest appointed financial planner that they had ever appointed, right? And my point there isn't, Jesus, well done, on. My point there is that you need to make sure you've mapped it out for yourself. What's my next job? Is my current job giving me all the experience I need to go for it? And the more exposure you can get to different areas within the industry that you're trying to stay in, whether that's finance or cooking or chef or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Once you expose yourself to lots of areas, you'll quickly find what area is most attracted to you. Like I went into finance originally. I'll tell you a very quick story if you're okay for time, right?
We're loads of time.
It's a story I have told before, right? So if anyone watching this has heard it before, I'm sorry, right? But we'll give it again, right? So when I was very young, my dad had a heart attack, right? He had a quadruple bypass. 3-4 years later, he had another heart attack. He had 3 stents put in. Another 2 years again after that. He had another bypass. He had quintuple bypass this time. The man was only 48 at the time. Wow.
Wow.
So he had his first one at 41, which is funny enough, the same age I am. Then the next one at 46 and the next one at 48. And at 48 years of age, he turned around to his doctor and he says, at 48 years of age, the last 6 or 7 years, I have had 3 major heart incidents. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
The doctor said it's 2 things. It's hereditary. You can do nothing about that. And it's stress. What's the biggest stress in your life? And he said, probably work. The doctor said, can you afford to give up work? I kind of stumped and went, I don't know. And anyway, he went off to have a think about it and he got looking at stuff that he had done and he had taken out what's called an income protection policy. In very simple terms, it means if you're out of work sick, it pays you your wage until you go back to work or you retire, whichever happens first. My dad, took him a year or 2 to get his head around it, but at 50 years of age, my dad stopped working, all right? And he got 75% of his wage and his full pension contributions were being paid too. That's just the box he ticked, right? And he stopped working. Now, he did mad stuff then. Like he drove the school bus and drove me mad because he was always in and around the school and all that, right? But at 50 years later, he stopped working. And I remember thinking to myself, Jesus, this is deadly. Like he's really able to look after himself from a health perspective. My dad's actually, next week is my dad's first anniversary. So he died at 79 years of age last December. And we genuinely believe that he got those extra years, that 29 years extra, he wouldn't have got if somebody somewhere hadn't given him financial advice, right? Wow. Now, I was 10 when he gave up work. By the time it came round to me going into my career and making a career decision, I kind of went, I'd love to be able to do for others what that financial advisor, who I don't know who it was, but I'd love to be able to do for others what was done for my family and for my dad. And that's where my career came from. And that's why I believe people are better served with financial advice than without it.
That's a brilliant story.
And that is my why. That's why I do what I do. And
would you go into it again if you had the same choice at 18 or 19?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Like so one of the things that's happened is when I went back and got that job, and I was the youngest financial planner, I was working for Irish Life at the time, and up until a couple of years ago, if I'm really honest about it, when people questioned me about my financial planning career, and they said to me, when were you happiest? And I said, I was definitely happiest when I was in Irish Life. And the reason why I was happiest in my career in Irish Life was because all I had to do was concentrate on what I had to do with clients. I didn't have to worry about staff. I didn't have to worry about finance. Didn't have to worry about returns to the central bank or talking to the accountant or any of that stuff. It was just me and the client and nothing else. And I made a decision a couple of years ago where I wanted to change a whole pile of things. And one of the things I wanted to do was change the business, right? And I said, what I'm going to do here is, a couple of people approached me and asked me, would I sell the business? I kind of, maybe, yeah. And then I kind of felt that's probably a little bit early. And I'm kind of, no, I'm not ready to pull that trigger yet. Let's leave that one alone. And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put someone in to run the business. So in February of this year, 2021, I appointed someone to run the business. And now I feel like we're getting the maximum out of the business. He's grown the business. He's added 10 staff since February, where it's a different operation. He totally and utterly runs it. And all I do when I do kind of 2.5, 3 days a week with the private practice, and all I do is talk to clients when I'm at work for Prosperous. That's all I do. I'm back to where I started. And you know what? It allows me to do my media stuff. It allows me go on Claire Byrne Radio and write books.
That's a beautiful success story, you know, and I love to, that is a proper success where you're financially sort of secure and yet you can do what you want to do as well at the same time. That's the dream.
And when you, and is it jumping into your head when you're saying that's a beautiful success story, you wondering who did I sleep with?
Never.
We want to get to the tabloids first, Owen, you know.
Do you know what? I'll tell you a story now, and it's a very serendipitous story. As I said earlier before we started the podcast, I climbed the Reek this morning with a lad called Jake. And we were climbing the Reek and we were on the way down, and he knows I do the podcast and that, and he said, who have you lined up? And I didn't tell him. He said, do you know who would be an interesting podcast? And this is no word of a lie. He said, he listed off someone, do you know what, I forget who the first person he mentioned. And then he said, have you ever heard of Eoin McGee? And I said, of course I have, yeah. He said, he'd be a very interesting podcast. And that's a fact. I couldn't believe it. I said, you're not going to believe this. But I said, I'm meant to be doing a podcast with him later on. And he said he met you at a Louis Copeland, something to do with Louis Copeland. And he said it's a serious topic. He delves into, but he's actually great crack. So
it's funny, the corporate speaking gigs are really interesting for staying. Like I do loads of corporate gigs, right? And a lot of them are under the line. Like you go into a room and the company doesn't want. It's funny, companies are kind of like, oh, we can't let the outside world know that we're helping our staff to be good with money. Like, come on, lads, everyone's the biggest stressor we have, right? But it suits me, and I go in and do. But I do a lot of them, and I've an agent now who looks after all that stuff for me, and I do a huge amount of them. But one of the things I love about those gigs is it's as close. I know you guys do live shows and stuff, but it's as close as I get to a live show. It's as close as I get to people talking to me afterwards. It's close as, and I just love them, and they pay well. But the thing about it is that the Louis Copeland was a different one. That was a favor, right? That's just because that was more along the line of, it's an Irish business there. It's tough times. And I reached out to Louis. And Louis, to be fair, he charges me, but he gives me a decent discount. All the clothes I wear on the TV show, How to Be Good with Money, I've taken out of Louis. 90% of them. All the suits are... Yeah, and he gives me that stuff. And I went to him, and actually, I'll hang him here now, right? But I went to him and I said, listen, is there anything I can do for you at the moment, just to make sure that you are a business that's still there, no different than the local shop? I want to make sure that whatever, I don't turn around 6 months' time and go, geez, Louis Copeland is gone. I really wish I had done something to help them out or done anything I can. And he goes, yeah, no problem at all. I've got an idea. And we did a kind of, Louis Copeland does a huge, Jesus, an awful fucking plug for him. But anyway, he does a lot of casual wear as well as suits. And it's kind of, we're going back to the office, but are you going to go back in a suit? Are you going to go back in casual? And that was the whole purpose of the live stream that we did, or the Zoom that we did. Sure, I was talking to him. His business is flying. Like the website has just rocketed. They've done really well online during all of the lockdown, and he was never in any trouble. But he got a free gig out of me, so he did all right out of it.
He's dead right. I don't blame him.
But it's businesses like that you just hate for us all to come out of this and go, oh, I miss my local coffee shop. And that's what I'm coming back to that point again. And I know I've kind of done
it. But it's important. It's an important reminder. It's something that you don't think about until it's gone.
Yes.
Like the local, like we often lament about the town we had when we were growing up, myself and Stephen, compared to what it is now. And there's half the amounts of businesses there. And that is not what it should be. There's a lot of people that are living in and around the town. A lot of people that are coming home to it. There should be a more thriving town there.
Yeah.
But obviously we've had, like, from a small town perspective, we've had a very hard 10, 15 years, and it's hard to generate
we had a bypass that sort of took the traffic out of the town. It's great for driving, but for the town, it killed it.
Yeah, so you look at the way it used to be, and everyone in town does the same. It laments on what it used to be. But it's like, well, no one's really proactively going, what's the solutions here?
Yeah, 100%. Like we had the biggest bars per head of population in the country at one stage back 30 years ago.
Where are you? Swinford, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Swinford.
Was there almost 60 pubs in the town? Sure.
Yeah,
there was a tap. There's more taps for beer than there were for feckin' water in the town.
Yeah, that's right.
60 pubs, 60 lads, and 60 Tinder dates. There was 120 people drinking that Saturday night.
Yeah, it was good times. Listen, Owen, we'll wrap it up. Where can we find you, and when is the book coming out?
Well, the first thing to do is the Instagram. Instagram is a big part of where I communicate. You can get me on Twitter and everything else, but Eoin_McGee, EOIN_MCGEE, and a lot of content goes out through there. The new TV series is back on the screens, RTE1, Thursday the 6th of January at 8:30, and it'll run for 8 weeks. Some really cool stories this year, actually. And then the new book will be out around January, February, not 100% sure. And then, given, like, I know you guys, I sound like such a pompous dick, right? But I know you guys were talking to my agent originally. As far as I know, there's no payment for this one. But what I will do is I'll definitely see your listeners or your watchers at one of your gigs when you send me. I'm going to contact you and say, I need a couple of tickets for one of your gigs, lads, and I'm going to come along.
They're there ready for you, mate.
Yeah, I was looking at the diary just before. We'll see. I'm going to hit you up for tickets. And we'll then people can see me there too.
Excellent.
Anytime. Listen, but just be prepared. They are wild, as you can well imagine.
Yeah. And I'll buy you a pint afterwards, lads.
No,
Owen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, mate.
Guys, gentlemen, thanks very much for your time.
Alright guys, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the Dead Hedgehogs YouTube channel.
Look guys, and thank you very much for your support, and if you would like to support us a little bit more, you can always become a patron. The link is in the description. Cheers guys.